Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching.
The raging wind hit the closed shutters, and Harry shuddered. He cursed through his teeth and took his eyes away from the window where the December weather was raging, returning his attention to the screen of the old smartphone of his only wealth. The boy sat in reflection at the table covered with an oilcloth tablecloth in a garish floral pattern. His grandmother liked everything colorful, bright, and generally collective, as Harry scorned it. But now he didn't, because Granny wouldn't have heard it anyway. And she wouldn't have heard it for two reasons. First, she wasn't in the house, she was in the barn. Secondly, she was dead in there. Harry shrugged his shoulders shakily. The cold snap that the weather forecasters had promised, record-breaking even for the end of the year, was proof that Granny's last pension should have been spent on house repairs, not charity. You old fool. Harry gritted his teeth, and even now he was angry at her decision. The house is like a barracks, all rotten, and she's still jumping around, doing nonsense. She's out of her mind. Well, what help to the animal shelter when they themselves are almost worse than the neighbors' dogs live? Once one of the bloggers Harry watched used the expression emotional swings, and now the guy clearly felt how he himself swings on them, because after the irritation on the only one of his family came pity. He understood why the grandmother became like this. It happened when Mom and Dad died. Just 5 minutes ago they were joking, laughing and saying that they would bring their son some gifts from the city, and Salima an orthopedic pillow, so that she could at least sleep with her osteochondrosis. Then they got into the car, drove out of the yard, drove out on the village road, and the car suddenly swerved steeply, as if the driver had decided to lay a steep turn. Just brakes failed, and he tried to do something in a panic. The nose of the car entered the power pole. The windshield crunched, flying apart, and parents who did not have time to buckle up, as the doctors later explained, died on the spot. In general, in such an accident, they had a chance to survive, this doctors also said. But so it happened. Harry still clearly remembered how the grandmother howled, falling on her knees, how her mouth opened wide and her gold tooth sparkled. He remembered the clouds of road dust settling after the accident and the bitter smell of wormwood in the sun-warmed air. He remembered how his mother looked at him. No, she could not look at him anymore, but it seemed to him that she looked at him with reproach. Why, they say, did not stop, did not save. Harry was 8 years old at the time and was due to start first grade in 2 weeks. That's why his parents went into town for school shopping. And he knew for months that he was responsible for their deaths. He was even told about it directly by a neighbor, Ariana, nicknamed Salty Chica by the kids for her tough temper and the custom of whipping anyone who risked climbing her plot with nettles. If they hadn't gone to buy for you for school, we'd be alive, said Salty Chica. The grandmother, who had been crying quietly at the chest of drawers, where there were pictures of the family with black ribbons on each now, stopped talking abruptly, jumped up to her neighbor, and scolding her with such dirty words as she had never allowed herself before, pushed Salty Chica away. Harry, don't listen. She spoke quickly, stroking her grandson's shoulders and back with trembling palms. You are not to blame for anything. Mommy and Daddy didn't die. They flew away. They are well now. They will drink honey and eat halva and look after you from the clouds. It's not your fault. Harry, don't cry. I won't let anyone hurt you anymore. Since then, 10 years had passed. Grandmother herself had gone to the city several times, returned, sat in silence and drank heart drops, and then, wearing glasses, sat at the table and pored over some papers, wrote something, muttered something under her nose. Already later, Harry learned that grandmother was not immediately ready to entrust the role of guardian, and Harry was almost put in an orphanage. And then, when everything was resolved in Selena's favor, the two of them lived together. It so happened that there was no other family, and grandmother was an orphanage. And as she sometimes told in her memories, she didn't get along well with her adoptive parents. And then when she turned 18, she was pointed at the front door, and she left. On the money, carefully saved up for adulthood, she survived for the first time and then entered a technical school for a seamstress and got a dormitory there. Then I met a man 20 years older than her. He worked as a tractor driver. He asked her to marry him right away. Selena said yes. She gave up the city, her craft as a seamstress, and settled down as a mistress in a village house and went to work in a store there. However, sometimes sat down at the sewing machine, let a little local paid, not often ordered updates, but still a good dressmaker could count on a solid addition to the family budget. But there were no children, there were no doctors, no expensive examinations. They just waited, believing that one day everything would work out. And so, after 17 years, a daughter was born. They decided to name her Catherine. We raised, pampered their sunny little baby. They thought that at least she will change her fate, will not repeat the path of her parents, and will be able to settle in the city. But fate again in its own way ordered, and Catherine met a man. His name was Archie, and he, as he himself admitted, came from far away and did not know where he would settle down, what he would do. No, Archie was not some kind of a dummy and a bum just for family reasons left home. What those circumstances were, no one really got into his soul. Why? He said that he broke with the past and proved that he is not one of those who idly scratch his tongue. It turned out that Archie has a good profession as a carpenter. Catherine declared to her parents that now she does not need to go to the city. She wants to stay here and wants to get married. Salima and her husband shrugged their shoulders. The main thing, they decided, is that the children should be happy. And then, the village had not yet declined. There was work at the sawmill, which had not yet closed, so everything was normal. And then Salima's husband died of a stroke. It was a strong blow to the whole family. Salima dressed in black and said that until his death so will walk, because she is a widow and there is no more light in her life. But even a year did not pass, as she changed her decision because her grandson Harry was born. 8 years flew by like one day. It seemed that fate had mercy on the family, will now allow them to taste a normal, just a quiet life. And then another blow. Harry, you must study hard. Your parents are dead, do you understand? I'm the only one you've got left, and I'm not gonna let you. Do you hear me? Look at me. I'm not gonna let you throw your life away. In this style, and with a firm grip on his shoulders and a gentle shake, his grandmother often spoke to the boy soon after the death of his parents. At first, Harry was very much absorbed by these speeches, so much so that his eyes blurred. He worked hard at his lessons, and he was a quick mouse around the house, helping his grandmother with everything. But Selena became more and more strict. Grandson weeded the vegetable garden, washed the floor in the house, washed the dishes, brought an A on the test. She nods her head, pinched her lips, and said that it should be so. Not praising, not caressing, but hinting that you, grandson, only do what you have to do. And could, by the way, even better try. When the boys he knew were teenagers, out late at night, and even trying to have affairs with girls, Harry was locked up outside of school, reporting to Selena about everything. Need to go to the store for bread? Do me a favor, do it in 15 minutes, and don't you dare lie about there being a line, because Selena could find out from the neighbors if there was a line or if it's time to wash your lying mouth out with soap. Grandma, I'm hungry, Harry once said. There's no meat at home. The loader broke his leg. The store called me to help with unloading. I'll get paid. I'll buy stew. Selena froze. She put aside the spoon she used to eat vermicelli soup. Yes, since some time she had decided that she and her grandson were vegetarians. She had read in a newspaper that all diseases come from meat, and that meat prevents a person from being at the right vibrations of his energy body, which leads to unhappiness in life. Selena read it and decided that if she and Harry didn't stop eating animal flesh, they would both die soon, just like her daughter and son-in-law. And that's how the meat disappeared from the house. And also the eggs. Granny recognized dairy because she couldn't imagine the morning without strong black sweet tea and a piece of bread with butter. Do you want me from the innocently slaughtered? She asked in a muffled voice. Harry pulled his head into his shoulders. It's a shame to be afraid of a grandmother when you're already 16. Ashamed, but afraid, because Selena was quick to retaliate. She got up from the table, went into the hall, rustled something. Harry cursed himself for his long tongue. Then Granny came back. She went to the table, and she slapped and threw a gray lump into her grandson's plate. Harry shrieked and almost fell off the stool, but his grandmother's clinging fingers, digging into his shoulder and scruff, held him back. Eat, she breathed out in his ear, her breath hot and stale. Harry stared at the dead mouse in his plate, and it wasn't the cat. Mirka had run away from home. In fact, he told his grandmother that she had run away and disappeared, but in fact Mirka had settled in a yard on the other side of the village where she was sheltered. The cat's personality couldn't stand the vegetarian diet and changed her place of residence. So it was a mousetrap that worked. What Harry had managed to eat came to his throat. Eat it. Granny repeated and tried to bend his head down. Crazy old woman. A panicked thought flashed through Harry's mind. Stuck with his palms on the tabletop, he twisted out of her grasp. The stool toppled over. You old fool. Are you out of your mind? Harry was shivering like a chill. I hate you. He ran out of the house. He didn't care what scandal awaited him. Outside, behind the yards, he wandered in the fading dusk and cursed his young age at 16 years old. You can't run far. They'll catch you and bring you back. He knew a kid who'd been there while his father was on watch and his mother was drunk. And that kid said it could be very, very bad in an orphanage. Harry stopped, tilted his head back. The sky was so clear. Stars scattered nearby. It seems in the palm of his hand these silver blue fireflies can be scooped up. Then he decided to wait until he was 18 years old and then legally run away from home. Where to? Anywhere. In the meantime, he had to go back and make peace with his grandmother. Pretend to obey, and also pretend to break that soup bowl by accident, because you can't eat after a mouse has been in it. And he wanted a hearty, meaty, normal meal. And what he got in the school cafeteria didn't seem enough. Besides, there were still vacations, of course, when no one would feed him in the cafeteria. The next day, Harry came to the store and said he needed to talk to the owner. Have you decided if you want the job? John asked. I do, nodded the boy. Only, can I come in slowly sometime? Can you park your car at the second entrance? I'd like it to be inconspicuous. Selina squinted at John, who was a little aware of the domestic tyranny of Harry's family. I can even get paid less. Nodded Harry. I really need a job. Okay, we'll make a deal, John grinned. You'll work for me as a spy. Oh boy, John added. You run, as the age will come. You apologize for saying so, but only Selina would be a good psychiatrist to visit. I know, Harry sighed. Thank you so much. Since then, Harry changed his diet and receiving a small, but still a salary, part of it saved, of course hiding in a secret place, and part spent. And he bought meat, stew, sausages, sausage, smoked hams. All this was eaten, of course, secretly. Usually Harry bought a bottle of soda and a loaf of bread and went to the river. There was one place at the bend of the weeping willows, and if you climb under their branches from the side and could not see a man, and a man could eat in peace. Harry thought a lot about what kind of man he was now and what he might become. He wanted to get away from the village. Because, and it is clear only in the city you can succeed, but how exactly he was going to succeed, Harry didn't know. Probably he would have to go to university. Harry from 9th grade began to try to pull up his grades in school, because he knew for sure that sooner the sun would go out than you would have money for paid tuition. Therefore, only the budget. However, there was still an option that if it does not come out with a higher education, at least in the technical school to enter. In general, the closer the cherished 18th birthday became, the more the guy worried. And how to live further? It was strange, but here, literally only at the age of 16, covered with a suffocating wave of realization. But he grew up grandmother's grandchild, which in the village everyone considers foolish, if not mentally retarded. Grandma's control had been established once then, after the death of his parents, and had held him like a pincer ever since. It seemed to Harry that it was okay for them to be the only ones left in the world. They had to stick together. Selina didn't like having guests in their house, and she didn't let Harry go out much. He could make friends with the kids on the street or at school. However, at school, you could count on your fingers those who even considered it necessary to say hello to him. Even Anthony, the main bully and, as the teacher said, a future criminal, considered it beneath his dignity to persecute Harry. So sometimes he could push him a little in the corridor, so that the boy dropped his textbooks, but did not hit, just spit under his feet and dropped through his teeth evil. Go on, you dunce. There was only one person in the school who said hello to Harry and generally socialized. Her name was Diana, and she was the daughter of a respectable man named John. From her father, Diana inherited black hair, brown eyes, and stateliness, and from her mother a modest but firm disposition. Excellent and diligent girl became close to Harry, when one day in the last quarter he was so bad business with math, this subject in general was difficult for him, that the class could not stand and ask Diana to help, as she put it, orphan. If anything pissed Harry off more than contempt, it was pity. He didn't need pity at all. He remembered how pitying his grandmother had been at first, and how pitying she had become afterward. Since then, Harry had seen pity as an implicit threat, as if something bad was bound to follow. And he was surprised, even shocked, that Diana, unlike his teacher, did not pity him in the least. She immediately, without any curtsies, began to communicate with him in her own way and demanded from him strictly in return diligence and success in his studies. Here, Diana said one day at recess, holding out a package to Harry. He stared at what was, judging by the smell, edible and meaty. A cocktail of emotions swirled in his face. "I don't need handouts," Harry muttered. But his stomach betrayed its master and responded to the offering with a loud rumble. The boy was ready to fall to the ground in shame. "It's not a handout," Diana replied calmly, but with steel in her gaze. "It's just a treat. I know you eat under the willows, and I don't approve of your grandmother's diet. Growing bodies need meat, so take it. My mom makes me a lot of it." "Thank you." Harry restrained himself. Unwrapping the foil and paper inside was a sandwich with meat, cheese, pickles, scalding hot ketchup, and sweet mustard. It was unreal, especially since the loader Harry was filling in for was back from sick leave, and John politely but sternly informed him that he couldn't take on 2 employees. Harry couldn't say that he and Diana had become friends, but at least now he no longer felt like the loneliest person in the world. And then, on the eve of the school's final exams, the whole fairy tale came to an end. Diana said that she, as soon as she got her diploma, she would immediately go far away to her mother's relative to live, because she promised to support her, to look after her during her studies at the university. He couldn't really explain to himself what Diana meant to him, but he knew that with her departure something very important would disappear from his life. "Harry," one day after graduation, the headmaster called out to him. "We need to talk." The boy frowned. Billy was like his grandmother, in the sense that his temper was just as nasty. "Okay," the boy muttered, "just not for long." "What's your hurry?" "My business." "Here's the thing, kid." The principal shook his head. "Even though you've already graduated, you're still not a stranger to me. My soul, hurts for you, foolish one. How are you going to live on? Do you realize that the way you and your grandmother live is not normal? You have no socialization skills. You were lonely at school. You didn't socialize. I studied normally," Harry argued in my defense. "Grades aren't everything." The headmaster held up his finger. "You're withdrawn. You even played silent in the school psychologist's office, and she wanted what was best for you. And you see, your, so to speak, mental profile." "Billy," Harry sighed, "I'll be 18 in 2 weeks. I'm kind of an adult. Why don't you give me a break? Why don't you just let me breathe?" Harry was getting more and more agitated. His ears were ringing, but he couldn't stop. "Where was your soul when my parents were gone, huh? Where was it? You only have a soul when the kids go to school, and in the summer you can't grow any grass. Where were you all when my grandmother locked me up and let me out on the porch twice a summer? Who came to us? Who asked her how she was raising me like you said? Oh, socializing. Where were you when I got sick and she sent notes to school and treated me with dog urine and burdock potion? Why didn't any of you care whether the child was alive or dead? Why don't you say something? What do you want, huh? You better go and lecture Igor. I heard he tried to steal Jacob's awards from a veteran laborer. Or do you keep quiet because you're afraid of Anthony and his criminal father? Fuck you, Billy." Harry grinned bitterly. "Leave me alone." Harry's 18th birthday was not until the winter of December, so he decided to be patient. What he was going to do later, he didn't say a word to his grandmother, and she didn't ask. In fact, the way they had been talking lately, it seemed to him that his grandmother was convinced that he was going to sit with her forever until he retired. Harry had decided in advance that he would pack his things quietly and carefully. On the very next day after his birthday, he would go to the bus stop in the village, where he would take a flight to the city, and that would be it. But then, he wouldn't care anymore. Harry had already saved up a little bit of money lately. His grandmother didn't mind his grandson starting to work part-time, because it was hard for the two of them to survive on their pension and children's pensions, with Selena constantly needing medication. Only after the birthday to leave did not work out, grandmother suddenly became ill with his heart, and Harry just could not leave. Otherwise would be the last bastard considered himself. The boy decided he'd stay a little longer. And then it happened. Harry came home one evening and found his grandmother lying on the floor. Nearby were a broom and dustpan, as if the trouble had caught him cleaning. "Grandma!" He rushed to her and immediately froze, because Grandma was lying completely still, and she was cold, and her body was hard. Harry reached out and, overcoming some animal panic disgust, touched the old woman's wrinkled neck. He had heard somewhere that this was the way to check for a pulse, and there was no pulse. Harry sank to the floor beside her, sat down, pulled his knees up, wrapped his arms around them, and began to sway quietly. His nose stung, as if tears were coming, but his eyes remained dried for some reason. Harry lost track of time. Then he sniffed his nose and thought. There was no more of his grandmother's strict control over him. The only and the last native person was gone. He was all alone in the world. Harry gritted his teeth, not to cry. He had a lot on his mind right now. And about the fact that he didn't have time to make up with his grandmother in the morning. They had a fight because he didn't want to help wash the dishes. And about the fact that maybe if she had lived on, and he had gone to the city, he would have earned money there. Bought an apartment one day and moved his grandmother to this place, so that she would meet her old age in comfort, so that the best doctors would be nearby. And most of all, Harry thought about the fact that, of course, they had known all kinds of times, but only she had not put him in an orphanage and raised him, took care of him. Native blood, in a word. What about now? What about him? Harry got up and staggered to the dresser to get the phone. He had left it at home in the morning. He needed to call. Who was supposed to call in such cases? And then he suddenly remembered that his grandmother's pension was due tomorrow. And she would. The postmistress would bring it, as always. And Harry also remembered that his grandmother never let the postmistress into the house and went out to the yard to get the money herself. And if she was sick, Harry, would go out and get the money. And that means, the boy swallowed hard, he could, well, purely theoretically, tomorrow to pick up the pension too. The whole thing. Big money. What he had saved up. He didn't have even a quarter of what his grandmother would have to get tomorrow. I could use that money in the city. So maybe. Harry squeezed his eyes shut and shook his head because he felt both creepy and happy at the same time at his ingenuity. Harry glanced up at the window. A snowball was falling from the sky. It was getting dark. Selena's house stood on the outskirts of the village, with a clear field on one side and a neighboring but uninhabited plot on the other. Grandpa Steve had moved to the graveyard 3 years ago, and the Hares, though they had appeared, had never been able to sell the house to anyone, because the price for it was ridiculously high and they didn't want to lower it for anything. So Harry thought, no one will see. Harry, standing over his grandmother's body, spoke the whole plan aloud. It was a habit he'd had for a long time, but only occasionally when he needed to concentrate on something. Selena was a full, large, heavy woman. Harry was panting with exertion and moving at an ant's pace as he dragged her across the floor and over the thresholds of the house and then across the yard. The final destination was the barn. There he put the grandmother, next to the dustpan and broom. Then, after thinking, he added a rake next to it, saying that the dead woman, while she was alive, decided to clean up the barn where the goat used to live, sold in the fall, because there was no strength to take care of her, and Harry, to do it in any way, did not agree. In Harry's head, a plan had already formed. Get in the house and go to sleep. In the morning, as the postmistress will come, he will take the pension, and then go to the neighbors to say, have you seen my grandmother? I woke up in the morning and she was nowhere to be found. Harry had no doubt how it would be. He would go looking for his grandmother, maybe even the postmistress would help, and then they would find her together. There would be screams, tears. Of course, he would bury the old woman as it was supposed to be buried, and quickly. And then back to town, with her pension in his pocket. You can, consider it as a farewell gift from his grandmother. She's already dead. What does it matter to her when she's getting ready for burial? Can't she wait a few hours? Harry felt a chill run down his spine at his own gloomy thoughts, and he hurried into the house as if he could be followed from the courtyard, where it was already dark. He put the tea on, took out of the bowl a pie with jam his grandmother had baked in the morning. Not bringing the cake to his mouth, the boy put it aside and decided that a piece of bread for tea would be enough. Everything will be fine, Harry encouraged himself. I'll be in town by tomorrow. Sitting at the table, he looked at the bus schedule to the city, looked at where he could rent an apartment for a while. Then Harry was going to go to work. Why not as a loader or a laborer? They get better pay in the city than in the country. You could rent a room, by the way. It would be a lot cheaper than an apartment. He'd make it to spring somehow, and then he'd study. The house, of course, he thought, could also be sold. No matter to whom, no matter what kind of money, it would not be an extra penny. He should take care of himself now. No one else. Turning out the light, Harry went to bed. He should have stoked the stove again, but he was too lazy to do that, so instead he pulled the second blanket from his grandmother's bed over himself. He fell asleep and dozed off slowly. Suddenly, he was jerked out of his sleep. Harry opened his eyes and stared at the window, which was neatly opposite his bed. Shining through the window was a thick, aspiring ball-shaped muff. As Harry opened his eyes, it seemed to him that there was something behind the glass. It was as if a scraggly face with eyes of fire was leaning against the glass and staring in. Harry jumped up on the bed. What the hell was that? Harry remembered that there was a bucket with birch branches on the wall. Why? It was just a bucket with birch branches and charcoal. If you put a poker in it and hang it outside the house, it would be a nice amulet from evil forces. And there was a feeling that this very bucket had collapsed now. Harry could not call himself a superstitious person, more like a materialist, who about all these things, otherworldly, and does not think much, because their own problems in life is enough. But right now on his back ran goosebumps. The thought flashed, maybe it's an alibi from the Walkers, who live 2 houses away, got into their yard. Then it would be good to take him back. The puppy is still a puppy, will run away further, maybe even to the forest itself, and will disappear. Blizzard is promised for the night. Harry hastily slipped his legs into jeans, then threw his jacket on, put on his shoes and left the house. The wind blew in his face, the wet snow flecked his eyelashes, got on his lips, and the guy, squirming, wiped himself with his palm. What a weather! The bucket was really lying on the ground at the bottom of the coals, scattered and already covered with snow, but there was no alibi in the yard. Meanwhile, the wind began to subside as if someone unknown in the sky switched the lever to off for this storm. The silence came so abruptly that it was deafening. The village was asleep. The sounds that made up everyday life, someone's speeches, passing cars, dogs chattering, working on the farmsteads, all this was absent. And in that silence, Harry's ears suddenly caught something strange, a sound that came from the barn. It was like metal clinking and a dog grunting at the same time. The thought of an alibi was immediately erased from his mind. He was only a giant in prospect, but a puppy for now. But only a very large dog could make such sounds. Harry shuddered. There in the barn, his grandmother lying dead, and then the sound stopped. And now he heard a whisper. A low, rumbling whisper flew around him, braiding, lulling him wearily, as if to subdue him. Harry was suddenly very frightened, because suddenly the whisper disappeared and he heard a moan, a prolonged one, full of pain and agony, and the voice belonged to his grandmother. Harry's materialism was self-destructing. The boy became very frightened. And at the same time, paradoxically, his feet carried him forward. Closer, even closer. But she was dead. He saw it, he touched her. He forgot to put on his gloves and pulled the iron handle open, pulling the door open, and then he yanked it open, because the pain burned his skin. Harry stepped into the dark depths of the shed, catching his breath. Idiot. If he grabbed his smartphone, he could have turned on the flashlight in it. But he was gathering in a confused way, in general acted as if in a dream, and in general everything that was happening was like some kind of delirium. The barn was quite old, and the night was clear, and gradually Harry's eyes began to get used to the meager glow of the heavens, which penetrated through the cracks, gaps in the walls and ceiling. But it was not good, because on the place where he remembered he had left his dead grandmother lying, there was now a creature. It looked like a human being squatting on the ground, except that people don't have such long arms with sharp claws, and humans don't have dog heads or wolf heads with eyes burning with hellfire. The creature slowly turned its muzzle. Harry knew exactly where the sharp teeth lurked in the crevice of its mouth. Grandma wasn't on the floor, but the creature was, and it, noticing the intruder, began to slowly rise, bend. Harry backed away. The creature froze without fully straightening up. You didn't have to be an expert on all sorts of game to realize it was ready to jump. It seemed to Harry that he must have stepped on the mouse by accident, and it squeaked shrilly. But in the next instant he realized it was making a thin squeal of terror. And then the instinct of self-preservation took over, and he turned his back and ran away. Sometimes Harry, like all people, had nightmares, and in them there were times when you wanted to run for your life, but the air became viscous and your legs and arms moved treacherously slow. And now the worst dream was coming true, because Harry had barely had time to jump out before he was overtaken. The creature shoved him in the back, so hard that the air was knocked out of his lungs and Harry fell, awkwardly throwing his arms forward. The thing that was chasing him raked his legs and dragged him back into the darkness of the barn. Help! Harry thought he was screaming loudly for the whole village to hear. But it was as if someone invisible had turned the weather control lever back to the on position, and his cry dissolved into the howling of the wind. Twisting like an eel, Harry managed to roll over onto his back and kick his attacker. But the creature rushed forward, settled on his chest, and tightly squeezed his sides with its knees. The boy's head was squeezed by strong paw hands. Claws dug into his scalp, pulled so that tears of pain splashed from his eyes. And then his head was just lifted a little and pressed back against the frozen ground with such force that the stars flashed in his eyes. And then Harry collapsed into the deep, soft, saving darkness, where there were no eyes burning scarlet, no stars swirling above him, no regrets that if only Granny had stayed alive. When Harry woke up, at first he was afraid he was blind. He couldn't see anything. But after a moment, he realized that there was a bandage on his eyes. Pulling it off, the boy squeezed his eyes shut from the bright light, looked around, and he didn't understand anything. He was in some small room, no windows, bare walls painted light gray. He was on a single bed covered with a coarse wool blanket and fresh linen. The room had almost no furnishings, only another table in the corner and a chair. An empty bucket stood in the other corner. "Hello," Harry called out into the void. "Hey, what's going on? Where am I?" He whirled his head around and then froze because the scarlet light of a video camera was flashing under the ceiling. The guy swallowed hard. What the hell? He jumped to his feet and rushed to the first door, but no matter how hard he pulled the handle, the door wouldn't budge. Harry shouted, pounded his fists, kicked his feet, but no one came. He stood under the camera and looked into it, demanding to be let out immediately. There were all sorts of thoughts swarming in his head. First of all, he had been attacked by a psycho in the evening, and if he was a little more superstitious, damn it, he was ready to believe right now that it was a real werewolf, and only a small part of his brain was resisting it. Harry also remembered that his dead grandmother hadn't been in the barn, so someone had found her. She couldn't have left on her own. This last theory made the hairs on his head stand on end. He thought that maybe, purely theoretically, was he arrested for what he was doing. Harry had no doubt that his plan was illegal, actually, except, unfortunately, it was only now starting to come out properly. Returning to the bed, the boy sat down and wrapped his arms around his head. How could he have gotten such a thing into his head? But, if he was caught, why, keeping him here? Why no one comes? And as if in answer to his question, the lock on the second door clicked open. Harry jumped. The door opened and a man appeared on the threshold. He looked about 50 years old and dressed like a butler. That's what I thought of when I saw him. And if this prim man with a pince-nez said, "Sir, would you like a cup of tea with bergamot?" Harry wouldn't have been surprised. But instead, the strange man approached, and then, with the speed of a special forces fighter and the agility of a magician, he twisted Harry's hands behind his back and snapped steel bracelets on his wrists. "Hey!" the boy exclaimed indignantly, jerking away. "What the? You're coming with me. Don't do anything stupid. Otherwise you'll regret it," the butler ordered in a colorless voice, grabbing him by the shoulder and leading him out of the room into a long corridor with gray concrete walls, the same floor and ceiling. There were pipes stretching under the ceiling, and Harry could have sworn they were underground. "Look, Harry started to say, but the butler interrupted him. "One more word in your mouth will be gagged. Any questions?" Harry shook his head. His hands were bound. What questions could there be? There was one. What's going on here? There were no answers yet, but something, maybe Harry's suddenly awakened intuition, told him that there would be answers soon. And he wasn't going to like them. He was confused at how many new corridors and staircases they'd passed a whole labyrinth. But now the butler pushed open a new door, and they stepped out into a corridor of quite a settled appearance. There were strange, grotesque paintings hanging on the walls, lamps in the form of strange figures of girls. The walls were scarlet in color, as was the floor. But that still didn't answer the main questions of who grabbed him and where was Grandma. And then suddenly the man pushed him into the room. Harry stumbled on the threshold and fell to his knees, nearly broke his nose, and only miraculously kept his balance. He started to get up and was about to swear because you can't do that to a person. He froze and realized that he was dead and had gone to the other world. Harry found himself in a luxuriously furnished office, which was like an oligarch, and right in front of him in the chair sat his grandmother. Harry had heard stories about the other side of the world, saying that people there become young and healthy. So it happened to his grandmother. She looked about 10 years younger, slimmer. Her gray hair was arranged in a lush style that made her look like an English queen. She was dressed in an elegant pink suit and trainers, with a lace brooch in the form of a bunch of flowers on her blouse. Her lips were painted with rich scarlet lipstick. Harry didn't know why he was picking up on this. Such attention to every detail, his brain was working on its own, without asking the shocked owner for permission. The background in the room, very quietly, on the verge of being audible, played a jazz composition. Grandmother. Harry's lips quivered. Tears flowed from his eyes. Grandma, I'm sorry. I should have saved you, and I should have called an ambulance, and Grandma, I'm sorry. She sat there looking at him with interest, as if a meticulous scientist had discovered an extremely remarkable and new specimen of a bug. So that's what you are. Well, you've shown your essence, said Grandma. Harry lowered his head and sobbed. Selena's voice sounded dry, cold. It didn't have the slightest bit of his old grandmother's intonation in it. And then suddenly Harry sneezed. Do they sneeze and get sick in the other world too? He asked, sniffling. Why do you think we're in the other world? The old woman in the chair arched an eyebrow. Because you, Granny, were quite dead, replied Harry. He was suddenly very scared. His imagination drew a picture of now he would look at her again, and the grandmother would turn white, her eyes might even be burning, and she would throw herself at her foolish grandson, and she would dig her nails into him with her claws and drag his soul, which had sinned, to eternal suffering. For some reason Harry thought that he might be attacked by Cerberus the Hellhound. And the next thought was that he must be going crazy if his head was so messed up. But is it possible to go crazy in the other world? And anyway, when did he die? When they hit his head on the ground? The back of his head was hurting, and that raised a new question. Can anything hurt in the other world? He was afraid to look up. He saw her legs. She rose from the chair, approached him. Clinging, sweet-smelling fingers grabbed his chin and forced him to look up. To think, this is all the legacy. And it was worth it. After all these years, this is all that has been spawned. Grandmother, Harry was shaking violently as he felt his consciousness moving a millimeter at a time to that dangerous edge, beyond which there would be no sanity left. I'm not your grandmother, boy, she said suddenly. Harry's eyes widened and he held his breath. His world wasn't just turning upside down now. It was flying upside down, and it was impossible to know where to land. But for what you have done, she should have done this. With these words, his face burned with a slap. Something warm flowed down his cheek, dripped from his face to the floor, and the woman in front of him squeamishly looked at her hand. She was hitting with the back of her hand. Her fingers were studded with large rings, and now they were stained. Take it away, she threw it. The man Harry thought was the butler grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, hauled him to his feet, and dragged him back down the corridor stairs. Harry found himself in the same room where he'd woken up, his handcuffs removed. Look, can I have some water? He turned around, but his request was left unanswered. The door closed. Thank you for taking off the handcuffs. The guy grimaced, rubbing his wrists. This is crazy. But at least he stopped thinking that he was in the other world. Just this woman looked like his grandmother. But as if the grandmother did not live in the village all her life, and was the wife of an oligarch. But where, in that case, his grandmother? Her body? And who is it? It's crazy, Harry repeated aloud the main definition for everything that was going on. He didn't know how much time had passed. He was thirsty. He wanted to go to the bathroom. There was a bucket for the latter, but nothing for the former. Harry didn't understand where he was, who he had been brought to, and what would happen to him next. His thoughts were tormenting him as if they were pushing at his head, and it hurt terribly. At some point the lights went out in the room and Harry assumed it must have been night. He had plenty of time to think, and the conclusions were disappointing. First of all, it was time to admit that he was a juvenile idiot. He himself had once made fun of Mickey, the village boy who had decided that in order to be an excellent student, he needed a cool laptop. And since Mickey's parents were poor, like almost everyone else in the village, he decided to take the money out of John's cash register and went to the store at night. The cash register was empty. Mickey, instead of being an excellent student, got a place on the register as a juvenile thief. And he got a kick out of his father, who was an invalid but chased after Fedor on crutches as if he were a world champion runner. Harry grinned bitterly, laughing at how Mickey had ruined his life, but he'd done even worse. What a bastard he was. How will he ever look people in the eye again? Let's face it, the guy said out loud to himself, maybe they'll kill me, and the problem will be solved. And with my grandmother at the same time, we'll see, added the guy and lay down on a hard bed, curled up in a ball. I'll apologize for everything, he whispered and fell into a deep, restless sleep. When he woke up again, he did not understand anything. Where is the top? Where is the bottom? Then he guessed that he was just sharply strung up on his feet, but the light in the chamber room was still not on, so the body was disoriented in space. Harry gasped and struggled in the arms of the one who held him with a bear grip and dragged him somewhere. Do you want to live? It was in his ear. Then tread carefully. I'll help you. Step. Who are you? Harry asked in a whisper. Shut up and walk. He was about to yell because he was so scared, but a hand clamped over his mouth and he choked on his scream. Careful, duck your head, idiot, the voice said harshly, but with a touch of sympathy when Harry's head didn't duck and he hit his forehead painfully. Though, hurry up. Strong arms dragged, pulling him against him the only way he could move in the pitch darkness. Who are you? Harry asked, taking advantage of the fact that his mouth was no longer covered. Shut up, the voice patiently informed. And I'm sorry. For what? For hitting you the other day, but there was no other way. The boy almost tripped again when some threshold caught under his feet. He was dragged by a wave of fear by a guy with a wolf's head and claws. What kind of horror movie is he in? Hurry up. And then the alarm howled. Harry assumed it was an alarm, but it sounded like a siren, and red lights flashed in the long hallway. The infrared lighting made it possible to make out whoever was next to him. It was a guy a little older than himself, taller, sturdily built, with the most ordinary facial features, that is, not those of a monster, but of a human. Damn it, he cursed, and yanked Harry so hard, forcing him to run, that he nearly fell. What are you? We don't have much time. Follow me. Corridors, doors, howling sirens, the flashing of what Harry guessed were emergency lights, and then he suddenly tumbled outside. His throat burned with the fresh, frosty air, and Harry plunged forward into a fresh snowdrift. His companion didn't let him lie down, though. He pulled him up and dragged him along. A minute later, he shoved him into the front seat of a parked car. He took the driver's seat and started the car, turned it abruptly, sharply, and pushed the pedal, accelerating and driving out of the open gate on some road. What? Where are we? Who are you? What's going on? Harry was asking questions that were as familiar to him as breathing. He saw and understood little. A country road on either side of the forest wall. Behind, where they were running from, some dark building was visible. Saving your stupid, muttered the guide, looking carefully at the road. My name is Alex. If we survive the next 24 hours, there are prospects. Before Harry could open his mouth for another round of questions, the mysterious Alex's phone rang and he pressed the speakerphone. What the hell are you doing? Yelled a hoarse male voice in which Harry recognized as the butler. What I should have done a long time ago. I'm out of the game. Come back here at once. I'll help you fix this. We've been over this. And you promised me. You promised her. You should have gotten rid of me back on the Riviera. Alex grinned wickedly. Tell the old witch that her spell is broken and the tame wolf has shed his collar. The boy is with you, isn't he? After a brief pause, the butler asked, How did you know? Alex said sneeringly, Don't do that. Listen, we can still settle things with you, but we need him alive. Until when? Alex asked, If you're really for me. Wish me luck. Alex opened the window and threw the phone away. Well, that's it, he said and turned to the shocked Harry and added, Now it's just you and me against the world, little brother. If now Alex's eyes lit up with a beastly yellow light or furry wolf ears, Harry would have been shocked much less. He squeezed into the passenger seat and looked at the guy as if he were a ghost. Alex stretched out his arm and snapped his fingers in front of Harry's nose. Right now, you only need to know 3 things. 1, I'm your only chance to get out of this mess alive. 2, everything is not what it seems. And the 3rd? Your grandmother's alive, Alex said. "Here," he said, handing Harry a bottle of water. He greedily sucked on it until he emptied it. They drove for quite a while, and then the lights of a gas station in a parking lot with big trucks lined up ahead. It was easy to guess that it was a kind of harbor for truckers. In addition to the gas station itself, there was a service station, a small store, and a cafe called Julian's. It was to the latter that Alex dragged Harry after he parked the car. "Where is she? What's going on?" "Keep it down, and I think you won't lose anything if I take a quarter-hour break and just eat," Alex threw. "I've been hungry for almost 24 hours, and all to save you, idiot." They went to the far table. Alex handed Harry one of the two menus on the tabletop. "Take your pick. Let's order." "I don't want to eat. I don't want to eat. I don't want to eat." "I'm not hungry." "You'll eat. Listen." Alex leaned forward a little and started whispering in confidence. "I know you're stressed out, especially after what you've done. But believe me, we're gonna need our strength. So now we just eat, okay?" "Girl," he held up his hand, drawing the waitress' attention. "We're ready to order. Cheeseburger, double fries, your special sauce, and 2 large lats. So, any pies?" "Cherry or strawberry?" The waitress smiled. "Cherry, please." "I hate cherries," Harry said. "You could have said that when you had the chance, but now you'll just eat what you're given." Alex squinted. Harry shrugged his shoulders. In the warmth of the cafe, where some tearful girl's pop song was playing quietly, he quietly began to fall asleep. But when the order was brought, he revived, and even with an unexpectedly good-for-himself appetite, ate everything, including the pie. Then Alex ordered another cup of coffee and finally spoke. "But I warn you, this is going to be a long story. Shouldn't we run away soon?" Harry asked cautiously. "Well, from those. Believe me, I'd rather explain everything to you once, so that you don't ask stupid questions later. Don't get in the way, so listen while you can. Don't worry about the time, we'll be covered." This story began in the middle of the 20th century. There were 2 sisters living in an orphanage in the region. Their names were Veronica and Selena, and they were twins. No one knew who their parents were. A basket with babies, almost frozen to death, was found one day on the porch of the orphanage. There was not a single thing with them, except for the diapers they were wearing, the holy blanket they were wrapped in. And there was also a note, the content of which caused in the shelter workers who read it a mixture of pity and contempt for the girl's mother. "I will not be able to grow up. I gave birth even though I didn't want to. Take care of them, please. I should have loved them, but it seems I am a bad mother." Veronica and Selena grew up like all the other kids, but they were still friends and socialized with each other. Both of them were blonde, gray-eyed, so pretty that even in modest dresses seemed like little princesses. But only the character of the sisters was quite different. Selena grew up kind, sympathetic, modest. She studied diligently, told the truth, protected the younger. Veronica could not stand to learn anything, even if she was promised that when she mastered reading, she would be given books of fairy tales. And she was also impertinent, greedy, and able to make others guilty, while remaining, as they call it, white and fluffy. In general, the director of the orphanage hoped that such lapushki quickly take, but the years went by, and the hunters to adopt the sisters were not found. Much to this detriment, by the way, the behavior of Veronica, which, if adults came, then began to behave so disgusting that no one could not think of taking them with her sister. And then one day a childless couple came to the orphanage. And the woman saw Katie, who was playing in the sandbox, and her sister was not around at that moment. The woman immediately went to talk to her supervisor and confessed that she had dreamed of having a daughter like that all her life. "I must warn you that our Katie has a twin sister. Her name is Veronica," said the director. The woman was surprised and sniggered, and her husband firmly said that actually, they had hoped to take only one child and that's it, they don't need two. "Then please look at the others," sighed the director. "We have wonderful children." But it turned out that this couple needed Selena, and the director himself thought that Veronica was a naughty sister. She was only preventing Katie from having a family, from living a normal life. And everything was arranged so that Katie was adopted and Veronica was left in the orphanage. Moreover, the sisters did not know until the last moment that they would be separated. Naturally, it was a huge shock for both of them. The director, however, hoped that Selena would quickly recover from the loss, because she would now live a well-fed, good life with loving parents. As for Veronica, after she was separated from her sister, she had become softer. Her boldness, her insolence, her explosive temper were gone. As a substitute child, the teachers could not rejoice, say, "Now there are no problems." But there were those, of course, who felt sorry for the girl. And then she was adopted. Years passed. Veronica became an adult. She was adopted by a famous professor of cultural studies and his wife, a famous psychiatrist. The girl received a home, the most excellent education, and as decided at the family council, she was to follow in the footsteps of her father or mother. But unfortunately, it all turned out so that the mother soon had to treat her own daughter. In the orphanage, where the angry parents later appealed, said that no, they never noticed for Vera any frightening oddities. Yes, she was a troubled child, but that was natural for such a place. And no, Veronica didn't suffer from any ordinary schizophrenia or megalomania. Her disorder was much more subtle. Just sometimes she was visited by obsessive, strange ideas, which the family even managed to successfully hide from others. But in principle, Veronica was the most ordinary, spoiled, and narcissistic girl of rich and powerful parents. And she began, like her father, to be engaged in beautiful things, or rather to study art. Soon she became famous as a skillful specialist in antiques, especially furniture. Veronica's life was such that one could hardly wish for anything else. She had no shortage of admirers. But none of her novels did not last more than 6 months, and she could not marry. Among the friends of the family talk about it, but carefully, because no one wanted to openly quarrel with such an influential and useful relatives. Veronica, as it seemed, was not burdened by her loneliness at all, but then she still met a man who managed to win her heart and get along with her difficult temperament. It turned out to be a man named Carlos Stone. He was officially a merchant, but it was also said that he had extensive connections to the underworld. And at the dawn of the 90s, they didn't say that anymore. They knew it for a fact. They knew that he had not only legal business, and it suddenly became clear that the talents of his wife as a connoisseur of antiques and expensive furniture in general can be very much in demand in the New World Stones engaged in trade in luxury goods. Moreover, often transactions had the legal basis. In any case, this was indicated by many people involved in their business. The couple had one child, Barry. Wishing to provide their son with a better future, he was sent to study in the UK, then in America in general, for this man abroad over time was more familiar than his native country, and Barry did not want to understand and accept the values of his parents, and resolutely refused to join the family business with a criminal tinge. He married a foreigner, some very ordinary girl from province, who was the daughter of a farmer, the owner of several vineyards. Naturally, Barry's parents were furious at his disobedience. They threatened to abandon their son. But then everything changed. First, Carlo passed away. He was successfully assassinated by his competitors. And then Barry had a son, Alex. Selena tirelessly apologized to her son and wanted to restore the relationship because they were not strangers. And Barry agreed, especially since his family needed material support. His father-in-law's vineyards suffered after the invasion of some mutated insects, which did not take any chemical or folk remedies. Barry began to annually send Alex on vacation to his grandmother, and she saw him as the man who, unlike her wayward son, should definitely take over the family business. And though she managed since the death of her husband to completely transfer the business in a peaceful, not criminal direction, but she still remained the same tough and even cruel person. She still had dangerous connections. So, you have questions. Alex stopped his narration. But in general, it was a forced break. They just ran out of coffee and needed to order new drinks. A lot, Harry answered honestly. I mean, I can't get it all in my head. You mean my grandmother's sister is a mobster? Was? And you? Working for her. But why? Why did you sake me? And what does she, Veronica, want from me? And you? Look, I realize I'm being an asshole, but you said my grandmother was alive. Where is she? Is she okay? How did you even find me, my grandmother? I don't understand. This is where it gets interesting, Alex grinned. Have patience and in a couple of minutes you'll understand everything. The waitress came, put fresh coffee in front of them, and he continued. It turned out that Veronica had started searching for her sister several times, but the first attempts were unsuccessful. Naturally, no one was going to disclose to her information about who adopted Selena, and that made everything complicated. But just a few months ago she found her. It was a shock. Everything that Veronica thought about meeting her sister suddenly lost meaning. She was at a loss. She didn't know how to approach her. She was haunted by an obsession Selena forgot her. Selena thinks Veronica, was a bad sister. But Veronica did not want to stay away, and the solution was found. She began to follow her sister. She decided that if she got to know her better, she would find the key to her heart. For this purpose, the best private detective was hired, and also, video cameras and listening devices secretly installed in Selena's house were used. They were installed when the fire department came to their house not so long ago. Grandma let them in. By the time Harry got home, they were gone. He didn't believe it was the fire department and thought it was some kind of crook who had come and probably wanted to get money out of Grandma. But they left when they realized there was nothing to take from her. Wait, Harry interrupted. You mean they've been following us all this time? Is she crazy? You're smart, Alex grinned. And unfortunately, you're right. My grandmother has really. Some problems from her youth have worsened in her old age. You know what I mean? He tapped his finger on his temple. So she sees your grandmother getting sick one day. And then what do? Selena saw all this and she said she had to go and check. What's wrong with her sister? But why did you just call an ambulance? Harry was outraged, and then he looked away, raising his voice without thinking that they didn't need to draw attention to this conversation. Veronica said that if Selena's alive, it's fate. She said we should take her to the best private hospital. Why were you there? Harry cautiously decided to get an answer to the question that had been weighing on him. Why were you wearing that mask? You see, Alex grinned. As I said before, Selena, she had been doing business for a long time. Not quite legal. And such a tradition was established before her husband's death. If one of her guys goes on an important assignment, for example, to talk to the competitors, her, so to speak, top-ranking assistants must have the appropriate appearance. For intimidation, and, after all, her husband had the surname Stone. Now it is almost no longer necessary. But here, she said to do everything, and I could not refuse. But you should know I do not share the ideas and principles of my grandmother. Delirious, Harry hummed, but he didn't interrupt further. He felt that the moment was coming for the most important thing to be said. We took Selena. We took her to the clinic. And it turned out she was alive. You see, your grandmother had a rare disorder like epilepsy, where a person freezes and doesn't react to external stimuli. That's why you thought she was dead. The doctors don't know why it didn't show up before. Harry made a sound of despair and regret and covered his head with his hands. How bad he felt. It turns out Granny was saved, but only by a miracle. Selena was saved, Alex continued. But her condition when she regained consciousness. In general, she is on the mend physically, but weak mentally. She is in the clinic. She's being looked after, taken care of. And as for you, it's more complicated. You see, Veronica decided that her sister would accept her, that they would have a wonderful relationship, as she would say, as a gift. Sacrifice you to her. Explain, Harry asked in a colorless voice, though he didn't really want to know the details. I don't know exactly what she wants to do to you yet, Alex continued in a mundane tone. But I think you can imagine. Considering that Veronica ran the criminal business in the 90s on equal terms with her husband, she thinks you deserve to be punished by the law. She also thinks her sister wouldn't have the guts to do it, so we need to help her. Kindredly. And you saved me, said Harry. Why? Because maybe, as you may have guessed, I don't want to work for my grandmother. You know, I didn't believe all those rumors about crime were true at first. Yeah, a lot of things are in the past for her. After her husband died, she turned most of her business into a legitimate business, and I might have been willing to put up with some of her oddities, but you were dressing up like a wolf. Harry interrupted him and looked him straight in the eye. You were doing her dirty work for her, weren't you? You said yourself about talking to the competition. No, Alex shook his head. It was my first outing in character. Before that, I'd only been doing my grandmother's duties, say, as one of the house bookkeepers, helping her keep track of her wealth. So I decided to step out of the game. I found a man who agreed to help me. We became friends, and I promised to help him in return. I was supposed to leave 2 months ago, but then I found out you existed, and I wondered what he was like, my third cousin. And then, as you already know, I decided to say now. And then Alex grinned. Believe me, you'll like my plan. I'm not sure about that. Harry honestly blurted out and added in a grave voice. But I can't say no, can I? Right, said Alex. So, we have to go. Wait, Harry felt like a small splinter being dragged into the stormy sea, and he didn't like his own role at all. I can't do this. I mean, what about us? Tomorrow we'll bring the pension, and neither me nor my grandmother is not at home. We are. Such will be. First of all, it's already been more than 24 hours, but maybe they haven't missed you yet. You've been living as hermits, and the postmistress will come. Probably, she will also think that she just didn't catch you. Just don't think. It's all. Believe me, it's not important for you. Alex looked at him very attentively, and then, unexpectedly, suddenly grabbed the collar of his jacket and pulled him towards himself, looking straight into his eyes. And it was the look of a man who knows how to get his own way, by any goals, and it's better to be with him at the same time than against him. You need to understand one thing right now if you're going to be. What's the expression? Oh, pussyfooting around. Well, if you pussyfoot around, you'll probably end up in a ditch with an extra hole in your head before the postmistress comes to see you again. Do you want that? So do what I say. Calling the waitress to pay, Harry's brother threw some bills on the table and left the cafe. They got back into the car and drove fast again, and soon the town loomed ahead. What's this? Harry asked as they pulled up in front of a club. The glowing neon sign, the line outside the club, and the loud, rhythmic music coming from the doors hinted at the nature of the establishment. Looking for the right person, Alex answered and dragged Harry along with him. Harry highly doubted that they would be allowed in here, more likely to be thrown down the stairs, because he personally had the most shabby look. His jacket was torn and the synthetic was sticking out in shreds, his sleeves were greasy, his jeans were torn, and he had a black eye. The audience looked, as it was fashionable to say, glamorous. Girls, despite the sub-zero air temperature, flaunted legs from under mini skirts on the shoulders of fur coats. Parked cars guessed solid foreign cars. But the security guard, who looked like a gorilla with a scowl, suddenly smiled at Alex and even shook his hand, and then, without dignifying Harry with a glance, let them inside. There was a rumble of outrage through the major crowd behind them, but it was immediately cut off by the doors and drowned out by the infernally loud music. Harry had never been in a real club before. His high was a village disco. He swiveled his head around. There's so much to see. There's even a fire show on one stage, and there were half-naked girls moving on high bollards surrounded by bar fences, wriggling snakes. Harry swallowed hard. What could the right person be here? Maybe it would be some rich man with connections who would get his grandmother out of here, and then Harry knew for sure he would apologize to her for everything. And then he would return home, and that would be it. Nothing else in the world. Forget everything like a terrible dream. To live honestly, peacefully, quietly, and let Grandma, whatever her character, live to be 100 years old. Hey, beautiful. Alex waved his hand to one of the girls, a tanned blonde, whose body shone with glitter. The girl, noticing Alex, unlocked the door of her cage and went downstairs. She shrieked happily and threw herself around his neck. They hugged. Harry's eyes widened at the sight of Diana. She dyed her hair blonde, lost weight, and, I think, he thought with burning embarrassment, had her breasts enlarged. But it was definitely her. And it was wild to me here, a modest and excellent girl who, dancing, almost naked, except for micro shorts and a short red leather top. Harry? Diana recognized it too and seemed equally shocked. Do you two know each other? Alex arched an eyebrow. In a way, muttered Diana. I see, nodded Alex. We need to talk. It's urgent. The three of them went to the table, or rather to a booth where the sound of the club was not so loud. Alex waved away the waitress who flew up to them, also, by the way, not very well dressed. Diana pulled off her platform shoes with a groan and tucked one foot and started massaging the foot. I thought you were going to go to med school, Harry blurted out. I did. The first, secret and unrequited love glanced at him with a frown from under her bangs. But you have to live on something. We grew up in the same village, Diana explained to Alex. I helped him with his lessons. And what about you? What are you doing here? In a few sentences, Alex explained their situation. Harry really wanted to fall under the ground because his despicable deed had been told too. He could understand if Diana had, say, knocked him on the head with her shoe and told him that it was disgusting for her to even sit next to such a creep and scoundrel. But she just listened, asked Alex questions. And that's why we need your help, he finished. I don't understand. Diana wrinkled her nose, then rounded her eyes. You mean Selena is in Goodwill? Exactly. Alex nodded, then turned to Harry. She's a part-time caregiver for the elderly. She's gaining experience and practice, so to speak. I'm not sure that's a good plan, Diana, as she had been for a long time, began nervously biting her fingernail. We don't have any others, Alex grinned. And besides, I'll be able to thank you. How did you two meet? Harry realized he was trespassing, but it hurt him to see Diana hugging Alex, pressing herself against him. We dated for a while, the girl said, embarrassed. What if we get caught? What if they call security? What if it's dangerous for Grandma? Questioned Harry, to whom the plan seemed insane. We don't have any other options, and besides, believe me, this isn't the worst mess I've ever been in. So, Diana, we have to make a decision right now. Okay, the girl sighed, and then pulling off her wig, it turned out her hair was as black as pitch. She shook her head and ran her fingers over her head, brushing the disheveled curls. I have 4 more dances to go and then. No way, Alex said as cut off. We'll need that time to ourselves. Don't worry, I'll talk to the owner. The truancy will be forgiven to you. Then I'll get dressed, the girl said and ran off into the depths of the club. Harry waited for her, staring glumly at the crowd on the dance floor. Alex was doing something on his phone. Finally, Diana came back, wearing jeans, funny blown pink boots, and the same shade of fuchsia, blown-down jacket. Great, let's get started, Alex said, rising. The good doll was designed to be a cross between a modern clinic and an upscale nursing home. Usually the residents were people who needed not only round-the-clock care, but also treatment, regular procedures, and high-precision examinations. On the vast territory, surrounded by a fence with a security checkpoint, there were buildings with rooms for guests, dining room, and other necessary facilities, and moreover, also for cultural and entertainment leisure. For example, there was a movie theater, library, theater, and around all this was a well-maintained park, where in summer flowers bloomed in abundance, and now, in winter it was decorated with ice and snow sculptures. At 10:30 in the morning, 2 cars entered the territory of the Devised doll. In the first was, as the guards were informed, a new employee, talented young Dr. Harry, as well as for some time already working here, Diana, who, according to legend, was Harry's distant relative. The second was Michael, a potential client of the good doll, who wanted to talk about how to get his great-grandfather into it. The plan of the little company of adventurers was that Alex, whom no one in the clinic had ever seen in the eyes, would distract the owner of this institution, who today was going to make a personal round of his possessions. Harry and Diana were to find Selena and quietly and discreetly take her out of the building, bring her to the car and hide her in the backseat, and then, of course, everyone would have to get out of here. And at first everything went as if according to plan. Alex went up to the 2nd floor and went to the office of the owner of this place. She had a thorough conversation. Harry and Diana went to the place where the old people lived. It was already known that Selena had been put in the 13th room, which was the furthest down the corridor. Diana, there you are. Suddenly a chubby girl in a nurse's uniform caught up with him. Help me out. Austin's acting up again. Diana sighed. Austin was one of the most troubled patients. He looked like a dandelion of an old man, but sometimes he imagined that he was in danger, that aliens wanted to steal him, and then he started hiding in the most unexpected places. Now he was hiding in the closet, and he flatly refused to go out for lunch, cursing the staff, saying that they did not want to feed him chicken soup and noodles, and let him for experiments. Diana had a rare gift. She could find a common language even with the most unpleasant old people. And that's why her colleague insisted, literally pulled her hand to help her deal with this grandpa. I'll be 5 minutes. Diana looked at Harry pleadingly. I'll be right there, okay. The fake doctor had no choice but to agree. He walked alone to the end of the hallway and pushed open the door to the room. Selena was here. She was sitting in a chair by the window and watching the snow falling behind the glass. On the way here, Alex had finally told Harry in detail about his grandmother's condition, and there was both good and bad news. Selene, as the doctors had promised, should be on the mend very soon. The strange attack had not damaged her ability to move, speak, or think clearly on her own. However, she had amnesia. The doctors assured her that it would take just a couple days of rest and her memory would return. For now, Selene only knew her name. She remembered that she had a grandson. She knew that he was an orphan and that he loved her. And she was also told that a very good friend had brought her to this place. But he was a busy man, and so he couldn't visit in person yet. Entering the room, Harry closed the door behind him. Grandma, He called out quietly and froze in place, not daring to make an extra step. There she was, his own grandmother. How could he be so cruel to her? Almost breathless from the fact that here, with his own eyes, he was convinced that she was alive and well. The old woman turned her head and looked carefully at the entrant. "Good afternoon," she said and smiled. "Are you my grandson?" "Yes, grandmother," Harry smiled back, "and I've come to take you home," he added. Actually, of course, there was a big lie. Alex hadn't even really explained what their plan was next, but for now he promised that he would take her, put Katie behind a safe apartment where her little sister wouldn't get to her. Not that Alex said that Veronica was capable of harming Selena, but he hinted that unlike Selena, his grandmother wasn't exactly stable and normal in terms of her psyche. So if Selena had managed to fall out of love with her sister over the years or didn't want to restore family relations at all, her reaction could be unpredictable. And then there was her manic idea about him, Harry. Well, it was complicated, and all that was left was to trust her brother. "Harry," Selena exclaimed and held out her arms to him, her grandson coming closer and hugging her. "Grandma, you're being discharged. Let's go home." "Really?" Katie's face lit up. "And I was thinking, I'm so sick of this place. It's clean and beautiful, like a sanatorium, but it's still a hospital. It's foreign. Granddaughter, I'm scared." She squeezed Harry's hand tightly. "Will it come back to me?" "It will come back, Grandma," he answered. "Now we're going to leave here. I think it'll get better. You'll remember everything." He smiled, threw an anxious look at the door. It seemed that they were about to burst in, shouting that he was not a real doctor and everything was lost. But one of the staff just passed by the room. "Come on, Grandma." Harry took out a light but warm winter jacket, winter boots, and a warm knit suit, a hat, gloves, scarf, from the bag he had brought with him. Grandmother took the things, and Harry hid in the bathroom for a while, not to disturb her change of clothes. But when he came back, it turned out that Selena had some problems, so she was having trouble putting on her socks and shoes. "I'll help Grandma," he said, and helped with that, as well as with the outer clothes, scarf, gloves, and hat. "Won't the doctor swear?" "He said I should take a long time to heal." "He won't, Grandmother," Harry said, looking out into the hallway apprehensively. Where the hell did Diana disappear to? Harry thought worriedly, and then, realizing that he couldn't wait any longer, he took his grandmother. On the way they met some of the staff, but no one paid any attention to them. "Where have you been?" Harry pounced on Diana, who had literally come at them from around the corner. "I'm sorry, I couldn't get there earlier," she said. "Who's that? Your fiancé?" Selena asked. "Just a friend," Harry replied. It was terribly strange, but when his grandmother had called Diana that, it had sent shivers down his spine. What if Diana really was his fiancée, or even his wife? No, of course, it would be pure fantasy. There's too much separating them. And after what he's done, you probably have no right to a normal life at all. Harry suddenly decided that when this was over, he should tell his grandmother about what he'd done, and let her decide what to do about it. Forgive or, most likely, the boy thought bitterly, she would decide to disown him altogether, and that would be a normal human reaction. Harry was beginning to think that luck was definitely on their side because the three of them had already reached the exit, but suddenly, "Selena, where are you going?" "There's a skinny, bespectacled guy, looks like a doctor. My grandson is taking me away." The old woman nodded. "They discharged me." "Who decided that?" The glasses doctor frowned and looked suspiciously at Harry. "Who are you exactly?" "And I, the boy didn't know what to say. Harry, his grandmother was now looking at him closely too, as if she had just now noticed his clothes. "What, do you work here? When did you learn to be a doctor?" Harry literally felt trapped, because the man in the guard's uniform was already looking at them, and a nosy nurse had stopped by. But suddenly the fire alarm was blaring. "Urgent, everybody out!" Diana shrieked and pushed the bespectacled man out of the way, dragging Selena forward under her arm. And you would have fallen at that speed, but you didn't because Harry was supporting her under the other arm. "What fire?" Harry's eyes widened as they jumped out into the fresh air and hurried around the corner of the building. "Nothing," came the voice of Alex, who was also here. It was immediately clear, though, as one of the first floor windows on this side of the building was open. "Your work?" Squinted, Diana asked. Alex nodded toward the parking lot. "Come on, let's go." "Grandson, what's going on?" Selena asked, frightened and confused. "It's okay, Grandma," he answered. It's a friend, he found himself in the next moment. The one who brought me here. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. I was just doing my job, Alex grinned. Almost ran to the parking lot. Get everyone in the car. Drive through the unlocked gate according to the security protocol of the good DLL. The guard opened it for the fire department to pass freely. But they didn't arrive in the end because they weren't called. And they weren't called because the director of Goodwill calmed everyone down by saying that he knew for a fact it was a false alarm. He didn't know about it because Alex, having handed him a thick wad of currency, had asked for this small favor to play along with him, and because Alex had offered a much larger sum than he could get from Veronica, and in no small part because Alex knew how to skillfully threaten people when it was necessary to force them to do something. It was for these reasons that the director of the good house had falsely activated the alarm system in the complex by himself for 5 minutes. Don't push it, Harry demanded. I'm not. It seems to you, Alex replied. Don't worry, I follow the rules. Almost. What's going to happen? Harry rode nervously on the seat. For what and what will happen? Asked Selena, who was sitting with Diana in the back seat. Don't worry, Alex turned to the female passengers and smiled charmingly. Luckily, we've rescued you, and now you'll be home soon. How are you feeling? Not bad, Selena sighed, but my mind is a bit cloudy. Everything that's going on seems strange. I agree, said Diana. It's like we're in a movie, and the one who wrote the script, clearly not all at home. We'd arrived. Alex parked the car in the courtyard of a modern, well-maintained apartment complex. All 4 of us went into the entrance, went up to the 6th floor. Alex opened the door. They entered the dark hallway because the windows in the apartment were behind closed blinds. Did the light bulb burn out? Asked Harry, because Alex rustled in the gloom. Suddenly the door slammed loudly and a light flashed on. It turned out that Alex was being held in a grip with his arm around his neck by a big man who was nearly breaking through the ceiling with his bald head, and Harry's brother couldn't speak, judging by the look on his face, and he could hardly breathe. Selena gasped, Diana squeaked, and Harry was speechless as he realized that now they were in real trouble. Because in the middle of the room from the small corridor through the wide open doors, one could walk straight into the spacious living room. Veronica was standing in the middle of the room. Next to her were some very serious and obviously armed guys, and I was so sure that at least my own people wouldn't betray me. Harry's grandmother said and added carelessly to the big man, Let him go. I need him alive. From now, like this one. She jabbed her finger at Harry. Veronica? Selena's voice sounded, stunning. It was a mixture of feelings. Recognition, disbelief that this was not a dream but reality, a thrill on the edge of joy when one was ready to believe in the best and only one step away from it. Veronica, is that you? Selena, the lips of the woman in the luxurious purple suit trembled. You remember me? How could anyone forget their sister? But the doctor said you forgot, that you have amnesia. What a nice scene in the spirit of Brazilian soap operas. Alex commented peacefully, rubbing his neck. The guy was glancing around and Harry guessed that his brother was thinking of ways to retreat with the least losses. In fact, he was looking for any escape routes at all. Selena and Veronica were talking, one by one and together. Veronica said that she had been searching, but everything was useless, and then suddenly, it all worked. But she didn't know how to approach it and decided to wait a bit. And lo and behold, the waiting turned to tragedy. Harry watched dooledly as his grandmother's face turned white when she heard about what he had done. I remembered, she exclaimed. I thought I was dreaming. But I remember him, standing over me there in the barn. And, apologizing, Selena turned to her grandson. How could you do that, darling? How could you? I thought you were dead. I thought you didn't care anymore, Harry said with numb lips and tongue. Why didn't you tell me you wanted to leave? Why didn't you tell me what your dreams were? I tried to talk sometimes. I know, she shook her head. Sometimes I've been so selfish. I was afraid that you'd leave me, that city life would spin, that you'd meet a girl, that you'd have your own destiny, and I'm sorry, Harry, but how many stories like that happen when people forget, abandon their old men? So it seemed to me, she sighed and smiled sadly, that if you had stayed with me, let not forever, but at least for a few more years, then everything would be calmer. And the fact that it turned out so, you should know. All right, that's enough. Stop it. Veronica's face contorted. She stomped her foot, clenched her fists. How can you do this? Your grandson's a degenerate. I saw everything. I heard everything. After what he's done. I know, Selena said firmly. He made a mistake. He's a young guy. He's got a bad head. If he knew I was alive, he'd do anything to save me. He'd give his last. What? That's ridiculous. Veronica laughed, rolling her eyes to the ceiling. You know, you and I were a lot alike then. And although we live different lives, but there are similarities here too. Your grandson is a traitor, a monster. Mine too, she nodded at Alex. No better. But you, sister, you were always weaker than me. You always had such a good heart. Now Veronica was trembling visibly, and her face turned white, and it nearly ruined you. But now that I've found you, I won't let you continue to be ruined. I'm sorry. For what? Selena didn't understand. Veronica, give me a hug. It's been ages, sis. Harry's grandmother stepped toward her with open arms, but Veronica didn't seem to notice. Get rid of them. Now. Veronica, the big man who had earlier held Alex in his grasp, said carefully. You want us to throw them out into the street? No, you idiot. Veronica was practically screaming. Just destroy them. Here and now. Oh, Katie. Believe me, it's going to hurt you to watch this at first, but you'll realize later that I'm doing all this for you. Look, now the people who hurt you and me are going to die. Veronica, what are you talking about? Selena looked like she was going to faint. The gangster-looking types who were subordinate to Vera looked at each other confusedly. Oh, come on, said one of them, a sturdily built, red-haired fellow. I was hired as a bodyguard to the Oligarchina, and I didn't sign up for crime. Of course you didn't. Veronica laughed again, and Harry, though he wasn't a psychiatrist 1,000 times over, felt that the laughter came from a person who was teetering on the edge of genuine and darkest madness. It was impossible to expect this from a frail old woman. That's why everyone present missed the moment when Veronica suddenly rushed to one of the men working for her and snatched a weapon from his holster. And the next moment it was already pointed at Harry. Congratulations, you bastard, Veronica hissed. You'll be the first. No. Selena stood in front of Harry, her arms outstretched, literally covering him. Don't you dare. You will not touch my grandson. Stand back, sister. I just want to remove the obstacle that's keeping you from being truly free and strong. And then I'll deal with mine. I should have done that to his father at one time, but I had that stupid maternal instinct in me. She laughed again and coughed. Over my dead body, Selena exclaimed. Alex meanwhile moved quietly along the wall. Harry assumed you wanted to reach the front door. But here Selena reached out to him, grabbed this tall guy by the hem of his jacket, and yanked him towards her, almost literally placing him next to Harry. And all the while she continued to keep her eyes on Veronica. Once you were my sister, you were my whole world, but then, life drove us apart. If only we could just talk. Selena grinned bitterly. I won't let you hurt the boys. No, you wouldn't dare. Harry, he's my family. How do you know I wouldn't dare? Veronica asked. Her fingers moved. It seemed that in a moment the irreparable would happen. But suddenly Veronica tried to take a deep breath, her face contorted with anguish and fear. Her free hand surged up and pressed against her heart. I don't feel well, she whispered, and then dropping her weapon, she began to slowly sink to the floor. The following events merged for Harry into a confusing, impossible kaleidoscope. Alex is calling an ambulance, and his own grandmother is not feeling well either, but she is brave and unstoppable. She wants to be near her sister. But despite the doctor's best efforts, Veronica died less than 24 hours later. She briefly regained consciousness and had time to talk to her sister. Harry wasn't present, but Alex was there because his grandmother led him. Harry was very afraid that such stress would have a bad effect on Selena, but she, hanging in there, said she now had to take care of her sister's funeral. And it also turned out that there were a lot of issues to deal with. They were all handled by Alex, and Cyril was the name of the man Harry had mistaken for the butler, and it turned out that he was the very secret ally of Alex who had helped them escape from Veronica's country mansion. Harry felt lost and alone. Diana helped him not to fall into despondency at all. She was there to talk to him about things, remind him to eat and drink. Harry and his grandmother returned to the apartment that Alex had rented for them. And of course, they talked about a lot of things. It was probably the most frank conversation grandmother and grandson had had in years. They apologized for a lot of things. They confessed many things. And they agreed on many things for the future. And then, after Veronica's funeral, Alex suddenly said that after some things were finished, he would fly back to his father. "What about me?" asked Harry, who suddenly felt so sad that he had found his second cousin, but he was disappearing. "What about you?" Alex grinned. "Relax, I'm not going to Mars. I'll see you again, and by the way, you must be a very serious man now." "I know," Harry nodded. "I have to take care of my grandmother." "Has she told you yet?" Alex squinted at him. "About what?" Harry didn't understand. "Veronica changed the will after she found her sister. She included my father and Selena. So, your grandmother gets half of Veronica's fortune. And that, believe me, is a lot. But since it's not just money, and not only money, but also some companies then, we'll have to get serious about it. At first, of course, we'll need a manager. I recommend keeping the people who helped Vera with everything. They're reliable. And the main thing is not connected with those affairs of the 90s. And then, you need to study seriously. Because one day it'll all be yours." Harry's mind couldn't quite grasp it all. He would have been screaming with happiness and jumping up and down when he learned that his grandmother was now a millionaire. But now he just shrugged his shoulders and hummed. But he agreed with everything Alex said, and asked him to help him as much as he could. He said he would, of course, and promised not to get lost, even when he flew home. Harry also remembered that originally Veronica's capital had been gained not only by some honest business, but also by criminal means. Of course, it was a long time ago, but it seemed to Harry that it was wrong to own such money. So he talked to his grandmother, again frankly and honestly, and they came to the decision that it was only fair to give a lot of the money to charity. They decided that they would help all the old people, children from large families, homeless animals, in general. At least somehow we should try to use this money for good deeds. And then Harry met with Diana. He thanked her for everything and asked if she was going to leave the club. "Why?" "Well, it's like that. It's just you dance for all sorts of men there. I don't even take my clothes off." She snorted indignantly. "Just dancing?" "Fine, do whatever you want." Harry waved his hand. "I don't mind." "Of course you don't mind." Diana frowned. "Why would I mind?" "Well, I was thinking that if we were dating, I could talk honestly with my girlfriend. Tell her what I like or don't like." Diana was silent for a few minutes. Then she smiled warmly. "Is that an offer to be a couple?" It came out like a fool, didn't it? "A little bit, but I get the point." I'll have to think about it. I'm in no hurry. But for now, we can just be friends, okay?" Harry nodded and reached out and gently intertwined his fingers with hers. They stood on the promenade and watched the sun slowly sink below the horizon. The snow sparkled. "Grandmother is inviting you over for afternoon tea. Maybe you could come. She won't be so lonely after." He didn't finish. But Diana understood him without words and said she would come. Harry knew that his life had changed dramatically, turned upside down. But more importantly, he knew that he had changed himself, and this was only the beginning. But he would never be the same again, and he hoped that he could be a much better person.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.